Hi, this is Sarah Bailey from SewWhatSherlock.com, and today I'm going to show you how to convert the memory quilting block, traditional block, into a paper piece block. So this is the source that I'm using for the memory block. This is on quilterscash.com, and Marcia Hone is the owner. She has some pretty strict terms and conditions of use for her own personal blocks, but for the traditional blocks like this one, she pretty much says to use them however you like. So I'm going to set up this tutorial for you guys, and I hope that it makes sense. If you have questions, you can email me at sewwhatsherlock@gmail.com. I'm happy to take questions, or you can post a comment on my blog post. That's fine too. So let's get started trying to figure out this block. So I've just been looking at the instructions here, and you can see that she mentions 2.5 in the instructions quite a bit. And so if you look at the instructions really carefully and you look at the picture, you can see that all of these little block divisions, she's cut them out at 2.5 or 2 inches finished. So we know that not only is the block a square, also we know that this square is the same size as this square, which is really important because on some patterns that's not the case. So we can tell also by looking at the picture, but definitely want to double check with the instructions. These squares, this square, they're all the same size. They're all 4 inches. And she's making a 12-inch block here. So I've been doing a conversion project, if you've seen it on my blog, and I've been doing all of my blocks at 24 inches, and I'm probably going to do 9 of them. So I'm going to go ahead and do this in 24-inch size. You can do it at 12 inches or 16 or whatever you're comfortable with. 12 and 24 work really well with these block patterns, but you can do the math however you're comfortable. So I'm just going to move this out of the way. And let's go into Quilt Assistant now. So I'm going to open up Quilt Assistant, and I'm just going to do a new blank project. Now it's going to ask me how big do you want your block. I'm going to say 24 by 24, and I'm going to say OK. Now if you haven't watched my original tutorial yet about setting up your preferences for Quilt Assistant, I'll do that again really quickly. So if we go to Quilt Assistant Preferences, this is the part that you really need to set. The screen diagonal is the most important part. So I'm just going to go to Measure. Now I know that my screen resolution is 109 dpi. I have an iMac that's 2 years old. So I'm just going to put in 109. I know that that's right. I'm going to hit OK. If you have a relatively inexpensive monitor or an older Windows laptop or an older iMac, your resolution is going to be probably 72, maybe 96. Newer Macs are going to be 109, and Retina display Macs are going to be 144. I'm not super familiar with regular non-Mac monitors because I'm a Mac technician, but I would guess 109 is a pretty comfortable number for most people. And in this tutorial, it's not super imperative, but it's just good to make sure you know your number. So mine is set to 109. I'm going to hit OK. Now the next thing I need to do is set up a grid. I know that this block is set up in 2-inch squares. I'll just pull that back over here now. As I said, each of these squares is 2 inches. And if I look at the pattern, I don't think I'm going to need a grid less than 2 inches. But I like to do a minimum 1-inch grid size. It's what I'm comfortable working with. So I'm just going to go ahead and set up a 1-inch grid. And you have a couple of different ways you can do this. You can type in, remember I'm doing a 24-inch block, so you can type in 24 divisions, or you could type in 1 inch by 1 inch, whatever you're comfortable with. If you want to try it with 2 inches, you can just type in a 2 here, and that'll give you 12 or maybe 6 if you're doing a 12-inch block. Although I will say if you're doing a smaller block, a 12-inch block, I would definitely go for 1-inch divisions. Okay, so let's go ahead and start putting in our pattern. So instead of drawing a line to divide where you see these long straight lines in this pattern, we really don't have to do that. The lines that we do need are really the lines that separate sections of the pattern. We know that we're going to sew together 9 8-inch blocks. So each of these blocks is going to be 8 inches. We know that one tiny little block is 4 inches, so this whole thing is 8 by 8. So we know that we're going to have to put these major divisions into our pattern. So we'll do that first. I know that those are going to be 8 inches apart. So there's one. And there's two. Make sure you draw all the way across. Okay. One of these is not right. This one is not right. Okay, so I'm going to correct this. If you need to remove a line, you just right click on it. No, that's better. Okay, so let's look back at our pattern again here. Basically, we just need to make these chevron shapes. And really, we only have two designs. So we have the corner block, and then we have the center block that goes through here, 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 and here. So there's just two patterns we really need to worry about. So the first one, let's do the center block first because it's a little easier. So all we need to do is draw that chevron shape in. And then let me go back. I know that this center point lines up with this edge point. So it's totally straight. I'm just going to go up and up. Okay, so I know my top points line up with the top of the block, and my center point lines up with these edges. So I'm just going to leave that just like it is. In fact, I'll go ahead and fill in the other ones as well. Now the only thing you need to be aware of is this line right here, you must have it. It doesn't matter if it goes to the left or to the right, you just have to have a block there. Otherwise, it's not going to work for paper piecing. So I'm going to go ahead and do my other blocks. My other center dividing blocks. I tend to be a little bit picky about my patterns. I want them to rotate properly, so you can see that I've come in from the left side as it rotates sort of around a clock. So all of my left sides of my chevrons are all the ones that are extending through the other block side. I hope that makes sense. Honestly, it doesn't matter. You're only going to print one of these anyway, so don't worry about it. Okay, so now we're going to focus on the corner block, which is only slightly more complicated, but same concept. So the shape that we're doing consists of something like this. That's actually it. And this is the same idea. This line could go either here or here. You just have to have one of them. And that's really it. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on. Alright, so that's it. That's our block design done. Now, the next step really is I'm going to go ahead and color this because it just makes things so much easier for me to understand. So I'm going to go into color mode. I'm going to hit C on the keyboard. You could also go up to your tool drop down window and just choose coloring. I'm just going to pick some random colors just so I can see exactly what's going on. All you do is pick your color and click the place that you want that color to fill. It's very simple. And I can't stand that background color, so let's do something. If you want to do a different color that's not in the basic palette, you can click on a color and then go to color values and you'll get a lot more choices. So I'm going to go for a lighter gray here. Alright, so now I've colored, I feel like I can understand what's going on a little bit better visually. So the last thing we really need to do is name it and print it. So we're going to just let it do the automatic naming. I can tell you already that it's not going to do it properly, but that's okay, we can fix it. So I'm going to go to Edit and then Name Shapes for Paper Piecing. So you'll see what's happened here. I'm really only going to focus on these two blocks because, like I said, I really only have to deal with 2 blocks and then the center block, which technically you don't really even have to worry about. So I'm just going to go ahead and focus on these 2, but if you wanted to correct the entire pattern, you could. So you can see here I've got this sort of weird divided rectangle thing going on between F and G, and it's not okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is move group G to group A because I always like to have an A pattern and a B pattern, so I'm just going to move it to A. The next thing is moving group G to group B. And then really the only other problem is that this triangle needs to be in this block and this triangle needs to be in this block. Now if I look at this and just logically think through the paper piecing, I can see that it's going to be okay for me to move those. It'll still piece properly. So I'm going to go ahead and move B3 to A, it should be A5. And then A6, I'm going to move to B5. And that's it. I'll go ahead and move group H to group C just for consistency. I'm not even going to worry about the rest of the blocks and the naming. It's just not necessary. So just to be clear, all I've done is correct the naming on group A and group B, and then I've just done a group C here for consistency. The next thing I need to do is select the pieces that I want to be printed. So I'm going to go into select mode. And all you have to do is darken the shapes that you want to be printed. See, this way, all you have to do is print 4 copies of this 1 page or 2 pages instead of printing 1 document that has 8 pages in it or however many pages it takes. So I'm just going to do these pieces. I really like to print the center piece because I just like having a very accurate cut. You don't have to. You could cut an 8.5 by 8.5 square and you would be fine. I just like going ahead and doing it with the piece template, so I like to include it. So now I've got these blocks selected. You can always go to select none if you've messed up or if you can't get it to deselect something. You can also just right click on a block if you need to deselect it. Okay, so I'm going to go to print now. And you can see it's got print, selected shapes, 3 of 11. That's great. I'm just going to do a little preview. And you will see, because I've done a 24-inch block, I'm going to have to glue these together. That's fine. I don't mind doing that. You really don't need to do anything else except hit the print button. Make sure that you've installed a PDF printer. If you don't have Adobe Acrobat Pro, you can download one of the free PDF printer utilities I'll post on my blog post at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and choose Adobe PDF. You could also just print it straight to your printer. You just need to make sure you print 4 copies. You don't need 4 copies of the center block, so that's why I like to print it to a PDF, and I can just print the pages that I need and just print 1 copy of the center block. So I'm just going to print this to a PDF and say OK. And I've already got this pattern done, but I'll do a new one. And so here's my pattern. It turns out to be several pages because there are the center block, you can see, because it's 8 inches across, it's just not going to fit on the piece of paper with 1 piece. So you can see my center block I'm going to have to glue. But otherwise, you just need to print 4 copies of 4 pages, cut them out, glue them together, and continue on with your paper piecing. This is actually a really simple block to convert, so it's great for beginners. Okay, so I hope that this made sense, and I know I talk fast, so if you have questions or if you're confused or need help with anything, post a comment on my blog or shoot me an email. I'm happy to help. Again, my blog is sewwhatsherlock.com, and my email is sewwhatsherlock@gmail.com. Thanks!